Hello class, welcome back. We're going to start our discussion of the problem of evil, and I want to show you how this is going to be broken up. So first we're going to look at David Hume and his objections to theism in terms of the problem of evil, and then we will look at the free will solution to the problem of evil, and then we are going to look at an ironic solution to the problem of evil. So let's start with David Hume, and I would like to use as a reference his dialogues concerning natural religion. So I'm going to pull that up. I've got this online, PDF online. If you go to early modern texts, you can Google dialogues concerning natural religion, and this is a PDF of the text. The part we're going to be looking at is part 10, which starts on page 40. So I'm going to go there. But while I am doing this, I want to talk about David Hume's dialogue. So this is a dialogue that has three main characters. The characters are Demea, who is an orthodox theist, meaning he has an understanding of the definition of God the way we defined God earlier. He, hang on, page 40, here we are, part 10. So Demea is the Orthodox theist, and you have the characters here. Demea represents the Orthodox believer who speaks of God analogically. So remember, analogical thinking about God. We can't know God as God knows himself. We can know by analogy. So God is like humans in having wisdom, but unlike humans in that God's wisdom is infinite and ours is finite. So this is how we were talking about God earlier. This is the classical theistic way of understanding God, analogically. Now also, this is a creative thing that David Hume does. You can see the analogical nature, the unequivocal nature, and the equivocal nature. These are three ways of talking about language and three ways of talking about language as applied to God. So he's taking logical options, David Hume is, and he's putting them into these three characters, and then he puts these three characters into a conversation about God, about the proofs for the existence of God, and about the problem of evil. So we're looking particularly at the problem of evil. Cleanthes is the character that represents the rational empiricist. Remember, an empiricist says all that we could know about God is, all that we could know is through our senses. And he's going to say, he's like Kant, all that we can know about God is through the senses and reasoning about the senses. And he is the character that speaks about God univocally, univocal. And when we applied that kind of language to God, God's wisdom is essentially like ours. It's the same as. But we're a little less powerful than God, perhaps. So God is finite in Cleanthes' view. Maybe he's more like Thor or Zeus. He has a lot of power, but not infinite power. So notice that's not the historic way of conceiving of God, but it is a logical option. Philo is the third character, and he represents the skeptic mystic. Remember, a mystic is one who thinks we know by experience, a special experience. So where Cleanthes is an external empiricist, a mystic is an internal empiricist. All our knowledge is from the experiences we have, a secret way of knowing, let's say. A skeptic is one who says we can't know. So maybe we can't know God exists objectively, but we can know through some special experience. And he speaks of God equivocally, totally other. So God's wisdom is totally unlike man's. It's perfect, but it's incomprehensible. Some theists have gone this way and they're speaking about God. He's so other, so different that he's unknowable. So notice that's where the skepticism comes in. And the mysticism is you have to have an experience to know, an internal experience. So, 3 characters, Demea, Cleanthes, and Philo, representing 3 ways of thinking about God: analogically, univocally, equivocally, and talking about God. This is religious language. So this is a creative work of philosophy. It's in the form of a dialogue, and these 3 characters are representing their positions and objecting to one another and agreeing with one another sometimes. And so we are looking at section 10. I'm going to go back to that, and I'll just show you how the handout is organized. This is basically a summary. So number 2 through 2 through 9 is a summary of what we're looking at in section 10, and section C is going to be an expansion of part of that conversation. So let's go through it, and I will refer to the text from time to time. I would like you to read section 10 of Hume's dialogues, though. Demea and Philo agree that religion arises from a sense of misery. Okay, so let's go and look at that. Demea and Philo. So I'm going to read, and you can follow along, and we'll see where this is coming from. And I'm showing you this because I'd like you to read the text along with the outline so you get a sense of what's going on. Because this is old school. This is written when? 1780s? No. 1776, I think, is when he dies. It is my opinion, I admit, replied Demea, that each man somehow feels in his heart the truth of religion, and that what leads him to seek protection from God, the being on whom he and all nature depend, is not any reasoning, but rather his consciousness of his own weakness and misery. Even the best scenes of life are so troubling or so unpleasant that all our hopes and fears look to the future. We incessantly look forward and try through prayers, adoration, and sacrifice to appease those unknown powers who, we find by experience, can so thoroughly afflict and oppress us. Wretched creatures that we are! What help would there be for us amid the innumerable ills of life if religion didn't suggest some ways of reconciling ourselves with God and soothe the terrors with which we are incessantly agitated and tormented? So that's Demea talking. Here comes Philo. I am indeed convinced, said Philo, that the best and indeed the only method of bringing everyone to a proper sense of religion is by making them see clearly the misery and wickedness of men. And for that purpose, a talent for eloquence and strong imagery is more needed than a talent for reasoning and argument. What need is there to prove something that everyone feels within himself? It is only necessary to make us feel it, if possible, more strongly and intimately. All right, so that is where I'm going to pause, and I'm going to go back to our handout and show you that we're going over this part. Demea and Philo agree that religion arises from the sense of misery. And notice they think all of us have a sense of misery, and that we can't be reasoned to religion. So what we need is someone with eloquence and the power of speaking to help us to feel what we already know, that we are in this deep sense of misery and wickedness. And if we feel it, then we'll become more religious. And that's what we need. We need religion to help us through this tough life. Right, now notice this is kind of a popular view. A lot of people think this, that people are religious because they need help in a time of need. They're some of the popular sayings. There are no atheists in foxholes. Foxholes are on the front line in battle. Think of World War I, World War II. They're in these holes, trenches, fighting against an enemy. And that's when you get religion, when you're about to die. So people get religion because they're suffering. They need help. Religion is a crutch. You've heard these things, right? So this is a common view. Karl Marx thought this. Sigmund Freud thought something similarly, and popular theism tends to think this. Religion is for the weak. Marx said that religion is the opiate of the masses, that it lulls people. This may be partially true. Popular religion could do this, but he thought people were religious because there's this system of oppression. There's the bourgeoisie who are in power, and the proletariat who are the working class, the people who are being oppressed, and the oppressed need religion to help them through life. It's the only hope they have. Now, the oppressors need to keep religion in place so that the people will continue to do their work. So it's a scheme, basically. That's Karl Marx's view. We can question that view too. Why does he think that? How did you come up with that view? Sigmund Freud thinks that religion is a result of our early childhood upbringing. He has some funky views about our relationship with our parents, particularly young men and their fathers. He thinks that young men are jealous. They want their mothers, and so they want to kill their fathers because they're jealous of their fathers, but then they feel guilty about this. And religion is more like a projection of that guilt on a cosmic scale. So we wanted our fathers to be ideal. They weren't. They failed us. And so we project this ideal father in the sky. And because we have this guilt towards our human fathers, and males want to kill them, so then we project that up into the sky too. And so we feel guilty because we want to kill God. And so we have to do these rituals to allay the guilt. And that's what religion is. That's Freud's view. Now you can question Freud's view. How did you come up with that? And if that's everyone's religion, how did you get that religion too? How are you escaping from that religion, basically? So Freud and Marx have this view that people come to religion because they're suffering, they're weak, they're oppressed, they need to allay guilt. So we should ask, though, some critical questions about this. It's for Demea and Philo, and for any who say religion comes from a sense of misery. Is this true of all religion or only some religions? Is everyone who's religious because of misery? What if people were born into a religion and they were never miserable and they maintained their religion? So think critically. Is it true that everyone who's religious is religious because of misery? And we should also back up and ask, what is religion? What is religion? In the philosophy of religion class, or in a world religions class, we define religion as the belief or set of beliefs we use to give meaning to our experience. And everyone gives meaning to experience, so everyone is religious. Think of the house. Your epistemology, your metaphysics, your ethics. This is what we're calling a world and life view. It's also your religion. So everyone has religion. So are all or only some people religious? Does religion arise or only change? Is there ever a time in your life where you don't have a house, where you don't interpret your experiences in light of your basic beliefs, where you don't have a epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics? No, you're born into that house. You're born or you're reborn, and so you can change your religion, but it's always with you. So Marx and Freud and Demea and Philo are mistaken on this. Sometimes religion arises from a sense of misery. And maybe religion doesn't even arise. It just changes. Maybe you're raised with a religion, and like Marx and Freud, they were raised Jewish, and they changed to atheism. That happens. But it usually happens because we fail to find meaning in the religion in which we are raised. David Hume as well. He was raised Christian and he changed to atheism. Maybe he didn't even admit to atheism because it was not the done thing at the time. If religion is the set of beliefs by which we give meaning to experience, can religion arise? So it seems as though this is a mistaken way of thinking, Demea and Philo. But they also go on, and I should draw your attention to this. This is where Demea comes in. All right. Demea says, "Indeed," replied Demea, "the people are sufficiently convinced of this great and melancholy truth. The world is full of misery and wickedness. These phrases, the miseries of life, the unhappiness of man, the general corruptions of our nature, the unsatisfactory enjoyment of pleasures, riches, honors, have become almost proverbial in all languages. And who can doubt something that all men declare from their own immediate feeling and experience?" So they're going to agree that the world is full of misery and wickedness. Now, I'm going to let you read this, and you can find each of the points in the outline in the reading, but I'm going to go back to the outline for right now and draw your attention to point 3. Demea and Philo also agree that the world is full of misery and wickedness. Consider the many attempts, see section C below, to avoid facing the full extent of natural and moral evil. I think I'm going to pause here because the next discussion is going to be focused. It's going to be focused on the misery and wickedness in the world. So I'm going to play the part of Demea and Philo and try to convince you that the world is full of misery and wickedness. Now, this could get a little bit heavy, depressing, because you might start to think about all the evil in the world and see the depth of evil. But that's the point. They want us to see how bad is evil. And remember, this is a world that God created. So we should be asking, if God is all good and all evil, why is there evil and why this depth of evil? And some people deny it. So we have to see, what is Cleanthes doing while they talk about misery and wickedness? So next, I'm going to go down here and we're going to cover the extent of natural and moral evil, which corresponds to the next section in the reading that I'd like you to follow along in the reading with, okay? So I'm going to pause and we're going to come back and talk about the extent of natural and moral evil. Ooh, it's going to get dark. Okay.